Trinity River Vision, the vision I like to think about is the vision that Ripley Arnold and his dragoons must have seen as they stood on the bluff and looked down at that beautiful, majestic confluence of two rivers flowing from out of West Texas and flowing together at Fort Worth, the Clear Fork and the West Fork. Probably Fort Worth's premier landmark. And for anybody to have any idea of vandalizing that landmark by an earmark is completely unbelievable to me.
In 2003, the draft plan for the Trinity Uptown project was put together, and in 2004 it was presented to the council.
The question comes up is who's going to pay for it? Is it going to be the taxpayers, or is it going to be the developers who benefit from it? And that kind of gets to the heart of the question, not only who's going to pay for it, but how.
The Trinity River Vision is an extraordinary project, but it is something that should not be funded by the taxpayer. The economic development such as this should be done in the private sector.
The average person driving up and down freeway, he's thinking about his job or trying to get a job or trying to make a little money to pay his taxes, and he knows very little about Trinity River Vision.
It's all tied up in bureaucracy and legislation that no one's ever seen in closed-door meetings where these things are approved, they're funded for, and the common citizen doesn't know. They have no idea what's going on besides, hey, there's going to be a river walk in Fort Worth. That's all they know. They don't know anything that goes behind it.
I don't want to be San Antonio. I don't want to be Austin. I think Fort Worth is pretty great as it is.
In moving northbound over the river, that will draw away from the downtown area. We have a great downtown, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to try and dilute the benefits that have already come from a strong downtown development.
Today we use the word earmarks, and that's kind of a dirty word. That's how it was put into that project. It was tacked onto a bill. It didn't get vetting through committees. And so what you had is a congressman, as a point of personal privilege, stuck this thing into a bill that wasn't necessarily debated by Congress. But the initial bill only permitted a project not to exceed $220 million, with the federal component not more than $110 million. That has not changed. And so even though the money hasn't been, even the $110 million hasn't been appropriated, we're now looking at a project that's approaching $1 billion, probably will grow to more than that over time. And so what you have is a project that was authorized at not to exceed $220 million, that's now 5 times that, and the federal component that was authorized has never been appropriated other than small amounts that were snuck in for bridges and studies and a few things like that. In this Trinity River Vision project, the developers want the citizens to pay for the cost of development, so all they have to do is put their buildings up and make some money.
I think one of the problems is that you can't take a semi-arid city like Fort Worth and remake it in the image of Vancouver, British Columbia. We just can't afford this high cost of downtown development at the expense of all our suburbs. We're a 300 and some square mile city. That city has a lot of roads that need to be fixed, has a lot of drainage problems. We have billions in unfunded liabilities when it comes to infrastructure. And we need to take care of those and quit pandering to special interests that want to use public money to make money.
We close the pools because we can't afford them, and yet we can afford to put $1 billion into a river so that the developers can benefit from that. To me, it is like parents, irresponsible parents, that will buy ice cream and cake for their children when they can't afford meat, potatoes, and vegetables. It's a matter of priorities, but the difference is a swimming pool or improve the streets doesn't have a plaque with somebody's name on it. The river's going to have somebody's name attached to being, this council was responsible for that.
The citizens who care had a very enlightened alternative to this project. Would have cost about $47 million when it was first conceived. No doubt that would be more now as well. But something of that nature would be a whole lot more productive and more in keeping with our, not only our history, but the natural beauty of the area. The valley storage area has changed, the width of the channel has changed, the size of the lake has changed, the funding sources have changed. Many of the amenities that were like the canals have never been funded. We know that the environmental cleanup will be substantially more than was estimated. We know that the cost, just from our own experience in life, you know that your construction costs will be much more than they were in 2003. So we're looking at still a poorly managed, underfunded project. The one stroke of genius, I would say, intelligent planning was that it was put under the auspices of the Tarrant Regional Water District, which has the responsibility for flood control and providing water to the city of Fort Worth and some surrounding, actually a lot of surrounding areas. They provide raw water. A lot of that water is provided or resold through Fort Worth to surrounding cities. But the actual taxing area of the Tarrant Regional Water District is fairly small and limited to Tarrant County, although their services extend over about a 13 to 16 county area.
The water district is, initial purpose was to provide water supply, flood control, and to a limited degree, recreation. The problem is a few years back when all this Trinity River Uptown started, one of our state legislators, Charlie Guerin, snuck a bill through the legislature. Most of the state reps that I've talked to said they didn't realize what it meant and what was going to happen. It empowered the water district to engage in economic development, to borrow money, to lend money, and to take property away from citizens for economic development purposes, not for flood control or general purposes. And so the water board then, with its expanded powers, because of Representative Guerin, then went much further and eventually started this whole project that they've got, way beyond what their initial mandate was when it was created.
Why does the Tarrant Regional Water District need a Washington lobby?
Am I concerned about our future water supply? Absolutely am. And again, whenever you hear that we're having to sue neighboring states to take their water, that does make you think, hey, there could be a pretty big problem here.
I've been around here a long time. I've been involved in building dams in East Texas and all over, big bond drives we had to do to build our dams. Why? To supply water for Fort Worth. I don't see what building a little town lake is going to do to supply water for the citizens of Fort Worth. And I think of that town lake covering up that beautiful confluence. I'd have to describe that by using the pungent description of John Randolph, that town lake, compared to the confluence, would shine and stink like rotten mackerels by moonlight.
I think if we're spending financial resources on development, which of course the Tarrant Regional Water District is doing, in acquiring property for Lake K. Granger, if you will, then they don't have those funds to be able to develop our water resources, which is what the job is supposed to be.
It's what I call pseudo flood control. That's just a false idea. I was here in 1949 when we had a flood. And after that flood, Congressman Jim Wright, primarily responsible, got these great levees that we have to preserve and protect us from any such future disaster. And I have seen myself in the records at the Corps of Engineers that anything needed in the way of flood control could be done for about $10 million.
By relocating the channel, in effect, moving the river, you move it to a channel that is somewhat straight and narrow. The water velocity increases, the flow increases faster, accumulates faster downstream, and with the project without a valley storage area would increase flooding of Arlington and Dallas probably.
From the perspective of the people on the east side, the deception of the Trinity River Vision is that it's going to solve flooding issues. But if you're on the east side of Fort Worth, it's not solving them, it's actually creating them. And that we're going to have to use Riverside Park and Gateway Park for floodwater storage, because the floodwaters coming through downtown are going to be coming through at a much faster rate. So we're spending all this money, we're actually creating flooding issues, and we have to use our public parks to store all of this, the floodwater. And again, that's part of the fraud, is that we're not solving flooding issues, we're actually creating them. And we're creating them on the east side because we have council members who support the project and support Lake K. Granger, and the west side, they did not. As a matter of fact, you had some very rich people on the west side saying, if you try to dump this floodwater on us, we're going to keep you in court for the next 400 years. And so all of a sudden, Gateway was available and Riverside Park was available. And Riverside is of a particular problem because the city of Fort Worth promised the citizens on the east side that Riverside would not be used as floodwater storage if they didn't want it. And they didn't want it, but it's still going to be there.